Hello everyone, good evening. Welcome to Ganit. Uh, we are going to start with another question as discussed earlier. Uh, Midpoint theorem questions are going on right now. And the question that we have right now with us is this. So we can see that in the question they are giving a very important information here. They are saying AD and CE are medians. Now, as we have discussed multiple times, medians are an indirect way of telling you that we are involving midpoints in the question. Now, it's very easy to guess that D and E are the respective midpoints. Okay. So, medians means D becomes a midpoint of which side? BC. And E will become midpoint of what? AB. Correct? Now, the second task is to identify the triangle in which that midpoint lies, and so that you can apply the midpoint theorem, right? So I'm going to start with triangle CBE here. If you notice, the D is the midpoint. So D being the midpoint and DF being parallel to CE, that's also a given fact in the question. I can very easily say, so one midpoint and a parallel line. That means converse of midpoint theorem will come into the play. So we can very easily say that by converse of midpoint theorem, what we can say is in triangle CBE, the F will become the midpoint. So F becomes the midpoint. That means BF will be half of BE. It's safe to say that, because if F becomes the midpoint, then this and this will become equal to each other. So BF is practically half of the entire BE. But guess what? BE is already half of AB. Think how? If you notice, the E was the midpoint, correct? That means because CE is a median, E was the midpoint. Now, if you consider BE is equals to half of AB, that means BF will become what? Half of AB, right? So what you have to do is, in this equation, you have to replace BE with half of AB because they are equal to each other. So you can say BF is equals to half times, what is BE? If you see here, BE is half of AB. So another half and then AB. And that gives us what? BF is equals to 1 by 4 AB. And then we write hence proved. So again, it's a very important application of the converse of midpoint theorem. So you observe one midpoint and a set of parallel lines, you immediately know that this is a converse of midpoint theorem question, not a regular midpoint theorem question. All right. Let's move to the next question now. I hope you have understood this one. Okay. Okay, let's see what we have here. It says in parallelogram ABCD. So good thing for us is that it's a parallelogram. So we have this side is equal to this side. Okay. And the entire AB is also equal to CD. So we can say, since the parallelogram is already a given information, we can say AD is equals to BC and AB is equals to CD. Opposite sides are parallel and equal to each other. Now, E is the midpoint of AB and AP is parallel to EC. Sorry, I think AP being parallel to EC was not represented in the diagram. We can mark it easily. So you have to notice one thing here. The parallel line they were saying in the question, but they had not marked it in the diagram. So that's where it becomes super important to read the question very clearly, very properly, and everything that you read in a question, please make it a point that you mark it in the diagram of that question. Geometry cannot be done, at least not be done easily, without marking your diagram properly. Okay, now we will proceed forward. So, and in the question they are saying E is the midpoint. So this is equals to this. E is the midpoint. So we have one midpoint and we have a parallel line. So we'll proceed with that. I'm going to consider the next job is which triangle? Triangle BAP. What do I have in triangle BAP? E as the midpoint. And what I have is EC parallel to AP. So this gives me two things really. Okay. So I have one midpoint, a parallel line. That means by converse of BPT, sorry, my bad, MPT. BPT is another theorem. I had a class today. Sorry, for a 10th grade student. So BPT is basic proportionality theorem. We study it in grade 10 similarity. It's a chapter based on triangles. So right now we are in still dealing with ninth grade stuff, so we will not get there. So by converse of MPT, we can easily say that C becomes the midpoint of what? BP, right? So I can say that BC is half of BP. That means 2 times BC is equals to BP. This tells us because BC is also equals to AD, if you see here, BC and AD were equal. Why? Because they were the opposite sides of a parallelogram. So I can write 2AD is equals to BP. Therefore, 2AD is equals to BP. Hence, proved. This is the first part of the question. Now, they are also asking us to prove that O is the midpoint of AP. Let's locate where is the O. Okay, here it is. So we just saw in this triangle that in triangle we just took which triangle? BAP. What we are supposed to prove is O as the midpoint of AP. So we need to again spot a triangle where we have a midpoint. So this time around we are going to look at BAP, but we are going to look at it in a different way. I'll tell you how exactly. Now if you see, the C is a midpoint, correct? We just proved it here, right? So look at triangle BAP, but this time the sides we are going to talk about, the midpoints that we are going to talk about is the C. So C is the midpoint. And we also know that OC is parallel to AB. How? Because opposite sides of parallelogram are parallel to each other. So OC is parallel to AB and C is the midpoint. So again, by converse of MPT, we can say O becomes the midpoint of AP. So both the parts of this question were solved using the converse of midpoint theorem. So like I have always told you many times that in this chapter, yes, the name of the chapter is midpoint theorem, but very frequently you will find the use of converse of midpoint theorem. And let me be very honest, it is actually more frequent than the real midpoint theorem. Okay, so please be careful with this. Uh, keep looking for the right correct triangle. Keep looking for one or two midpoints. Keep looking for that set of parallel lines. If you know your ingredients well, you can really cook a storm. Okay. This is a very important chapter from geometry's point of view for ninth grade students. CBSE or ICSE doesn't matter. It's a very, very important chapter. It is that important that you will find a lot of use for this chapter in grade 10th mathematics too. So I hope I have been able to explain you the concepts properly. With the help of these 6 questions that we have seen in these last 3 videos, I hope you are slowly getting a hang of the topic as well. And I'm always ready for more questions and more doubts. I will keep uploading more questions on this topic, but we have limited time. We are running towards the final exams. We are getting into that season. So I would rather start another chapter. And every time I come up with a good question from midpoint theorem, I'll keep uploading and I'll keep notifying all of you. Till then, keep preparing and keep rocking. Thank you.